What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Sixers Digest. In today's video, I'm going to talk about two guys flying under the radar in Sixers conversation, which is obviously being distracted by the James Harden storylines, the Joel Embiid shoe deal, and everything else going on in Sixers world. But I want to make sure I'm giving my shine today to Terquavion Smith and Ricky Council IV, who I believe are going to be future pieces of the Sixers plans. So in the video, I want to dive into a little bit of what to expect from these players, some takeaways from their preseason play, and overall expectations for what to make of them. It's nice to take a little bit of a step back from the James Harden madness. I will be back with some more takes on that as that continues to unfold. But for this video, I want to focus on some positivity, some actual basketball, and some guys that I'm looking for that I know will be suiting up in a Sixers uniform. Now, before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure that you guys are hitting that subscribe button. As of now, 83.7% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel just yet. It helps us out. We got a ton of big plans for the Sixers season come up. I love that the number's coming down. We're seeing it grow, but I want to keep the Sixers Digest family growing. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, ringing that bell so you're not missing out on content, and you can keep up from every step of the way. We got plenty of season to unfold, and things are starting to heat up, so make sure you're staying tuned to the channel. Now let's dive into today's topic and talk specifically about these two players that I want to touch on. So obviously the Sixers did not have a draft pick in the most recent NBA draft, but they were one of the most active teams in the free agent market, the undrafted free agent market once the draft concluded. We saw them jump right to the phones. They handed out 3 immediate two-way deals, that being to Azuolas Tubelis, Terquavion Smith, and Ricky Council IV. Now, Azuolas Tubelis, I think, is fine. He's not a guy that I am overly excited about. If you want my brutally honest opinion, I don't think he's a guy that has the brightest NBA future. I think he's a little bit of a tweener. But my biggest issue with him specifically is his kind of label is as a stretch big, and he measured in at 6'8", which is just not stretch big size in the NBA. So that is kind of my concern with him. I think he's a little too slow-footed. There's nothing that I think stands out or that he's going to find a way, and especially when he's competing with a guy like Filip Petrusev, who's essentially a more advanced version of Tubelis at this point in time. I don't have a ton of hope for his long-term future. But Terquavion Smith and Ricky Council IV, I have plenty of it for each of them. So I'm going to dive in and talk about each of them a little bit. I want to kick things off by talking about Terquavion Smith, who is my favorite player of this class, of the undrafted rookie class, and a guy that I genuinely believe will be at least a role player in the NBA for the foreseeable future. No, I don't think it happens right away. I think he's going to have a short lease. I think he's going to spend plenty of time developing at the G League level this year. But I think if you fast forward 5 or 6 years, that Terquavion Smith is going to be a name that people recognize around the NBA. So to talk a little bit about him specifically, I want to begin by looking at his stats in college here. Spent 2 years at NC State. He was a guy that had a chance to be a first-round pick last year, wasn't completely cemented in his outlook from there, so elected to go back to school. Despite there being some statistical progression, his draft stock kind of sunk, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute. But just to look at these specific stats here, last year he averaged 17.9 points per game, 4.1 assists, 1.4 steals, 3.6 rebounds, shot 33.6% from three, so you can see that number dropped from the 36.9% he shot as a freshman. And the biggest red flag the teams were pointing to was there was not enough of a playmaking leap. Yes, he went from 2.1 assists to 4.1 assists, but he didn't develop into a true kind of point guard type player that I believe the hope was. Now, I want to begin by saying that some of this, I genuinely believe, is due to some overlapping strengths and weaknesses with his backcourt partner in Jarkel Joyner. Jarkel Joyner, who signed an Exhibit 10 deal with the Dallas Mavericks. They also got to face off in the Summer League, which was a fun game to watch, and they were competing and going at each other, so that was cool there. But for Terquavion specifically, last offseason, I was banging the table talking about him as a first-round pick, that I was all in on this guy. He's still 20 years old. He's still got plenty of progression to do. But what I like about his game specifically, number one, he's fearless. He's a guy that is never afraid of the moment, even if you want to look at the preseason game for the Sixers as a whole. The second he steps on the floor, the first possession in the most recent preseason game against the Nets, he goes and shoots a three and nails it right away. So very cool to see him not being afraid of the moment. And we saw this throughout college, that I remember several games where Terquavion just straight up took over for NC State, that he became a fan favorite of mine. As I mentioned, I was banging the table for him as a first-round pick last year, and I don't really understand the red flags or why teams are afraid of him. And I'm not alone in this belief. And I have a quote here from Rico Hines, who joined the Sixers as an assistant coach this offseason and said, quote, Terquavion Smith had a great summer. I think he has a world of talent, and I think the sky's the limit for him to continue to grow and get better. He's a kid that had a first-round talent if he had come out probably a year ago. Rico Hines is right about that. And it also should be noted that Terquavion was one of the Sixers players that was very active in the Rico Hines runs, one of the more noteworthy and more lucrative, prestigious honors for these offseason workouts for players. That there's a ton of talent that goes through there. Terquavion held his own with all of these guys and was a key cog in the Sixers unit that was running with the Rico Hines runs there. So cool to see him getting involved right away, and he made his impact felt. That some of the highlights that were coming out of there that you can see also on this channel of me breaking down were very cool to see him just being capable of these things. It's obviously a different beast as he begins his NBA leap, and one of the biggest things that is holding him back and one of the concerns is just his frame, that he does need to put on weight. As things currently stand, he weighs 165 pounds. He would be the second lightest player in the entire NBA from day one. He obviously needs to fill out a little bit, but one thing that I like about Turk, and I kind of mentioned this before, is it is the fearlessness. That does not hold him back. It's not like a guy that gets knocked off the line when driving to the basket. He still attacks with a purpose, and he's not afraid to eat some contact, even if his body's not made to fully fill out or just take that beating just yet. And I do believe over time he will be a guy that fills out. I think he has the frame for it. This isn't like a Chet Holmgren or a Victor Wembanyama situation where you kind of look and it doesn't look natural exactly. Terquavion's a guy that I'm confident with over time it will fill out. He's still a young kid. He will get there. Now to shift gears and talk about the other player in this is Ricky Council IV. Now for starters, the coolest thing about Ricky Council IV is he is not a fourth generation Ricky Council. No, he has three brothers named Ricky Council I, Ricky Council II, and Ricky Council III. And he is Ricky Council IV, goes by the nickname C4 at times. Come off, most recently played at Arkansas. He had some a transfer situation, began his career at Wichita State. But I do want to jump in and look at the Arkansas stats here. And one thing that I think is very cool to note about that, you can see him right at the top, Ricky Council averaging 16.1 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 2.3 assists. The three-point percentage is something I'm going to circle back to at 27% on 3.5 attempts per game. But look a little beyond this. Anthony Black, right underneath him. Anthony Black was the 6th overall pick in this year's draft. Went to the Orlando Magic. Then beyond that, Nick Smith Jr. He was the 27th overall pick in this year's draft to the Charlotte Hornets. And then all the way down at number 6, Jordan Walsh was the 38th overall pick in this year's draft by the Boston Celtics. I love Jordan Walsh. I'm really disappointed that he went to the Celtics. He's one of my favorite players in the entire draft class. He's a guy that I'm very confident in that will be a high-level role player, so it's frustrating to see him go to the Celtics. But this just shows that with all this talent on this Arkansas roster, it's Ricky Council that was the guy leading the charge and leading the team in scoring. Now, some of this I don't think is going to directly translate. The efficiency is something that needs to be noted. He does a nice job. He plays with kind of like a strong football player kind of vibe, the way he attacks the basket, puts his head down, uses his body. The three-point shot is the point of biggest concern. The 27%, that simply will not cut it at the NBA level, and there are some mechanical concerns that need to be worked on for this. Now, I look at that positively, that I've seen signs of progress already from Ricky Council, that his form, his release, it looks cleaner than it did in college already. That, to me, is the biggest point of positivity surrounding him at this time. That I do think there's an aspect where his three-point shot may unfortunately make or break his NBA future. So to see some progression already is super encouraging. I've already said I'm very much a Taquan Smith guy, that I want to be leading the charge on that fan bus. But if I was a neutral party and knew nothing about either of these players and just flipped in and watched them in summer league and watched them in preseason, I think I'd be more excited about Ricky Council IV right now. So that's great to see from him. He's also a guy that has all the tools to be a high-level defender, led by his motor. He's a competitor. He's a guy that wants to get down and dirty, wants to compete, takes matchups personally in a one-on-one standpoint. These are exciting things and exciting characteristics about a player, so I'm excited to see that in Ricky Council IV. Now, the last thing that I want to jump on, there's obviously not too much of a takeaway here. These are the preseason stats as a whole. They aren't guys that saw too much of an extended opportunity. That Nick Nurse is obviously playing through, trying to get his starters some runs so they iron out a system, but you can look down to the last two slots in the 11th and 12th here. Taquan Smith only played 6.9 minutes a game. Ricky Council, 8.3 minutes a game. If you want to look over to the points per game, there's really not too much to go off here, but I did just want to show that they were getting their chances on the floor, that they're kind of in the mix with these guys, and we got at least something to go off. So beyond that, I just want to talk about the outlook moving forward for both these guys. Both of them are on two-way deals, which means they can be back and forth between the Delaware Bluecoats and the Philadelphia 76ers. For this season, I expect both of them to play primarily with the Bluecoats, and I think that's absolutely fine. But I think with young players like each of these guys who have specific things that they need to work on, that it's good to let them play through their mistakes, improve on those things, and get minutes. I don't think it's as positive of growth to have them just sitting at the end of the bench at the Sixers and not really getting an opportunity. The Sixers have kind of taken a similar route with Jaden Springer over the past couple years, where he's a guy, and there were some Doc Rivers circumstances, which were more of the reason why Springer did not get the NBA opportunity. That's a conversation for a different day. But I do believe in the standpoint of when he was drafted, he was 18 years old. Let him play through some mistakes. Let him get some more basketball under his wing. And now we're seeing him ready to contribute to these Sixers. So I'm excited this is the year for the leap for Jaden Springer. I think both Ricky Council and Terquavion Smith are on a little bit more of an advanced track than Springer was when he first came into the NBA. I think they're guys that could be ready. And honestly, this year specifically, I would like to at least see Terquavion get his run with the first team. Let's see what he can do. That from a skill set standpoint, he brings a lot of what this team needs. He's a good ball handler. He's a guy that can create his own shot. He's instant offense in a way that not a lot of guys on this bench have traditionally been. So I would like to see them at least get an opportunity. But for this season, I don't think that there's going to be too big of a role for either of these guys. But in the long term, these Sixers are doing the right things, that they're beginning to set this path of you bring in these prospects, these guys with these high ceiling, this high potential that could turn into something, and then they begin to, that you flash forward a couple years and all of a sudden you have these homegrown guys that are ready to be contributors. You look around the league, you look at these other teams, and that's how successful teams are able to stay successful while having that next guy waiting in the wing. You look at the Denver Nuggets, for example, that Bruce Brown just left and went to the Pacers this offseason, got a bag there. They have Peyton Watson ready to step up and fill that role, a guy who has developed, who has followed from that. That's what I want to see from Terquavion Smith and Ricky Council IV. I can't believe neither of these guys got drafted. I think both of them deserve to be in the draft. I once again believe Terquavion Smith should have been a first-round pick last year and don't understand why his stock slipped so much. I get the efficiency. I get he's not a true one, but there's just so much to like about this kid as a basketball player. So while we're lost in the James Harden nonsense, all the drama that is clouding the 76ers, there is young talent on this team to be excited about. These are guys that you're going to want to be fired up for and watching when they get their opportunity. And on that random Tuesday night against the Magic when the Sixers are shorthanded and all of a sudden that it is Terquavion Smith time, he's going to be ready to deliver. That there is very much a world where that we get one or two 25-point performances from Terquavion Smith, who just catches fire when the opportunity is right. Either way, I'm very excited about these guys in the long term. Let me know your guys' thoughts on these two players specifically. I'm very fired up about them. I think these are the right styles and types of players that you should be, that these are high reward type players that I believe their potential is much more than the risk with them. There's no harm in bringing them in, and you get to see what they turn into. You get to help these guys develop. So I'm very excited to have them at the bottom of the roster. Make sure, once again, that you guys are hitting the subscribe to this channel. Thanks again for watching this video. Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.